أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام، وأتوب إليه من جميع ظلمي وجرمي وإسرافي على نفسي، وأتوب إليه. يا دائم الفضل على البرية، يا باسط اليدين بالعطية، يا صاحب المواهب الصنية، صل على محمد وآله خير الورى سجية، واغفر لنا يا ذا العلا في هذه العشية. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء، وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء، وخضع لها كل شيء، وذل لها كل شيء، وبجبروتك التي قلبت بها كل شيء، وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء، وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبوجهك الباغي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهدك الإثم، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل اللقاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء، اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك، واستشفع بك إلى نفسي، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع، أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا، وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته، وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم أظم سلطانه وعلى مكانه، وخفي مكروه وظهر أمره، وغلب قهره وجرى قدرته ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومته. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائه ساترا ولا لشيء من عملها الغبي بالحسن مبدلا غيره. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فاده من البلاء أغلته وكم من إثار وغيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم أضم بلائي وأفرت بي سوء حالي وغصرت بي أعمالي وغعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد أملي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومثالي يا سيدي. وأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملت في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودبام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأل كشف ضري والنذر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أهترز فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودي وخالفت بعد أوامري فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاء وألزمني حكمك وبلاء. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستغيلا مستغفرا منيبا مغرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني لابتداء كرمه وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدي وبعد ما انتبى عليه قلبي من معرفته ولإجابه لساني من ذكره واعتقده ضميري من حبه، وبعد الصدق واعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيته. هيات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت أو تبعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن لتغى بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترف بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العين بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح ست إلى أوطان تعبدك تائئة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة. ما هكذا الظن بي ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنه. يا كريم يا رب، يا كريم يا رب، يا كريم يا رب، وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، ألا أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثو يسير بقاء قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف ذليل حقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته. فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على أضابه فكيف أصبر على فراغه وأبني صبرت على هر ناره فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامته أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفو فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية آمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وضاغت أعضابها بمعصيته وأبس بين أتباعها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمته ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيده ويتوسل إليك بربوبيته يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمه أم كيف تؤلمه الله وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرا وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتغلغل بين أتباعها وأنت تعلم صدقها أم كيف تزجر زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب أم كيف يرجو فضلك في إتقه منها وتترك فيها هيهات هيهات ما ذلك الذنوب ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أغتأ لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحدي وقضيت به من إخلاد معاندي لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماء أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجل ثناء قلت مبتدئا وتتولت بالعنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستعون. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Like the time that we always together, we do the dua kumayla Saba. At this point, I remind everyone to remember those who used to be with us, used to sit with us, especially in Saba, and your loved ones, and inshallah, all would benefit from this dua, especially those who sponsors the program. Inshallah, everyone would benefit. And التماس الدعاء نسألكم الدعاء. إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تاب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل أملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أذرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثبات الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائه والشاهد لما خفي عنه وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسدت أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستر يا رب 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 يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه مؤولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قف على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في البارزين واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأذنب منك ذنوب المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد ومن كادني فكد واجعل لي من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة مني وأخصم زلفة لدي فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك وعتف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما إن شاء الله. ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأغلني عثرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا رب نصبت وجهي وإليك يا رب مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني مناي ولا تغتى من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرزاق يا سريع الرزاق يا سريع الرضا. اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته قناة. ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاهه البكاء يا سابق النعم يا دافع النغم يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم. صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بي ما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. تماس الدعاء نسألكم الدعاء.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Your second salawat is condolences to Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And your final salawat for the hastening of the master of our time, Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Before we begin our discussion tonight, while I'm not with you, I have been paying attention that the conditions in the Bay Area have been quite apocalyptic, to put it simply. It is Thursday night. It is the night of dua and the answering of dua and the answering of hajat. We should raise our hands, inshallah, and if we can recite 5 times, Amma Yujib. May Allah protect the mu'mineen, the Muslimin, and all of the people that are in a state of difficulty, whether it's because of the fires, whether it's because of COVID, whether it's because of any difficulties that Allah is testing His creation through. May Allah alleviate the difficulties, and may we have the protection of Sahibul Zaman in all of our affairs. 5 times, if you can raise your hands together. Let's recite it, May Yujib together. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. 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 اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحق أهل البيت, may Allah accept our hajat and remove these difficulties from us and answer our prayers and our needs in these difficult times. بحق محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بذكرنا المصاب أهل البيت عليهم السلام. May Allah increase in our reward for the commemoration of the difficulties of Ali Muhammad. These next few nights that we have together, my hope is that we can take the time to discuss some of the important things that individually we can continue to work on and continue to develop within ourselves to help keep us on the path of Ali Muhammad in these difficult times. One of the beautiful things about having a community, and one of the things we're realizing about the significance of a community, is that when we are together, when we can sit together, spend time together, our community uplifts and fulfills many of the individual needs that we have of keeping on the path of Islam. It allows for many things to occur naturally, that naturally we move in a direction that follows the religion of Islam, that we can look at each other, rely on one another, support each other, and accomplish these good goals of staying attached to the path of Ali Muhammad. However, when we're alone, we have to exert extra effort. We have to work extra hard to keep us on the straight path, to keep us attached to Allah and not separate from Him. As such, the next few nights, inshallah, we'll discuss simple things that are within our power and ability and thoughtfulness that we can have about them, about ensuring that we stay attached to Ali Muhammad. We're beginning our discussion tonight with Surah Baqarah, verse number 154, where Allah gives the instruction, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ يُقْتَلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٍ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. Don't say about those who have been killed in the way of Allah that they are dead. Rather, they are alive, but that you don't perceive. This concept of perception and looking at someone who in the apparent nature is no longer with us, but next to Allah is still present and alive, discusses and requires a special kind of insight or enlightenment. This enlightenment that we're talking about is what is sometimes referred to as basira, to have sight. What we mean by this is, looking at the world as it exists today, many times we get caught up in looking at the material and the apparent nature of what exists. And we only look at what the material in front of us represents. We see something physically present, we consider it to be valuable. There's something that we can't see, we consider it to be less valuable. These ideas of associating value with material presence is something that Allah is explaining in this verse of the Quran, that He's explaining that there are those people who you can't see. Don't consider them as gone and dead. No, they're alive. They have a continuation, that they continue to exist, but that you can no longer perceive them because of the limitation of your sight. When we talk about enlightenment, when we talk about developing basira, to have sight, to have an understanding of what's going on, what Allah truly wants from us, we talk about being able to prioritize and understand what is really valuable in this life and what really has value and meaning in this life. And that's what truly is important with this existence. When we take a look at people in our society today, we see that many of them, because of the availability of material wealth, because of the availability of material gains and the potential to be able to achieve it, they've stepped away from the concept of spirituality and acknowledging the higher power that's present. There's a statement that says that most people that you'll find who are spiritual are, for example, farmers, are, for example, athletes, are people who can exert maximum effort, but it's not always just their effort that brings them a conclusion, but rather there's so many other affairs that are associated with that conclusion that bring them to a positive conclusion. You see, a farmer can plant seeds all day long, but if the rain doesn't come at the right time, if the temperature isn't at the right place, if, for example, insects don't attack his crop, all of these variables that are outside of the control of the farmer are involved in his producing a crop. That aspect of acknowledging that things aren't in your control give you the belief and the certainty that someone's hand is involved in your affair. The same with an athlete. An athlete can train day and night, can make himself the best that he physically can be. But at the day of competition, whether it's his health, whether it's the conditions of the track, whether it's the conditions of the competitors that he's competing against, so many variables are outside of his control that he has to acknowledge that his success is not simply his to control, but rather that a higher power is involved with his process of attaining success and not being a failure. The society we live in, less and less variables seem to be out of our control, which is why more and more of society comes to the conclusion, what God? Where is Allah? Where is this creator? If I want something, I possess wealth, I can go and I can purchase it. I possess the power that I need to go buy what I want to and to have what I want. And the only thing that prevents me from attaining a goal is my own capacity and capability. This is one of the cruxes of materialism. That materialism looks to keep you busy in the process and engaged in the process of constantly attaining something and chasing after something, so that the only object that we see is that I need to exert my energy more and I can have more. And this removes the concept and the paradigm that something exists behind the material that sits in front of me. Allah in the Quran, and through the example of Ahlul Bayt, is constantly teaching us about more existing in this world and in his creation than what is physically visible to man. And that the true value of something, it's not in its physical presence, but in its value is in its condition with Allah, which is why Allah in this verse raises the example of the shaheed. He points to the example of the shaheed, that the shaheed is one that you, based upon your material understanding of the world, have written off as dead. وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ يُقْتِلُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٍ. That's upon the material, you've seen the example and you've said that this is done, this is over with, this is gone. But Allah is giving the instruction that no, بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ, that this person is truly still alive, but that you can't perceive. Our goal, and one of the responsibilities, how do we develop this perception? How do we develop the perception and focus on what we truly want to achieve with life? What is the true value with Allah? You see, this is where we see the example of the companions of Imam al-Hussain in the field of Karbala. That these companions of Imam al-Hussain were able to look at the material plane and what existed and prioritize and see the reality of success with Allah as opposed to success in dunya, as was seen by the soldiers of Umar Sa'd. Mal'un. Take a look at their stories and look at their information of what goes on. That how did these people come to the conclusion that the true reality of what exists is with Allah, and that reality is what we want to chase, and that the life of this world is not as meaningful or as important as what we see in front of us. That realization, that acknowledgement is what we call enlightenment, to prefer that which is with Allah and to see the true nature of something that exists versus what the apparent world is presenting to us as success. The event of Karbala is not the first and only instance where we see this idea and this example of paying attention to what is with Allah as being the reality and being what we want to achieve. As a matter of fact, there are examples of this in the history of Islam as well too. When we take a look at the example of the Battle of Mu'tah. The Battle of Mu'tah is an event that takes place in the life of our Holy Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Our Holy Prophet had sent emissaries to the borders of the Islamic nation. And one of these he had sent to the northern border on the Syrian front where a Roman town was present. When this emissary was received by this Roman town, and the emissary invited these people to the message of Allah and to the message of Rasulullah, they beheaded and killed this emissary. When news returned to Rasulullah that his emissary that he had sent peacefully to these people had been killed, Rasulullah prepared an army of 3,000 men under Zayd bin Harith and sent them up to the northern frontier again. Upon reaching there, these 3,000 men came to the conclusion that a Roman legion, because this town had been under the authority of the Roman Empire, had just been stationed or just been sent there and was present there as their 3,000 soldiers showed up. The description is that this Roman legion had over 10,000 soldiers within it. Some historical narrations even wrote that over 100,000 soldiers were present there at that point in time. As soon as this condition presented itself, that 3,000 Muslim soldiers were standing in front of a Roman legion, the difference and disparity between the number of people present, 3,000 versus 10,000 or 100,000, immediately brought to the conclusion that we're not going to win this fight. Zayd bin Haritha sat down with the leaders of these 3,000 men and he had a conversation. Included in these 3,000 men was Ja'far bin Abi Talib, the brother of Amir al-Mu'mineen. These people, Zayd and Ja'far, when they sat down with everybody and everybody came to the conclusion, listen, we've really misjudged the enemy's power. We brought a force we thought was equal to what would be present here because of the affront shown to the Muslim nation. However, what we've learned is that we're nothing in comparison to them. And a number of the companions stepped forward and said, let's go back. We're done here. We have nothing to do here. Let's go. This is where Hazrat Ja'far comes to the conclusion. He says, what do you mean go back? He says, what did we come here to do? I didn't come here to win a war. I came here to fulfill the command of the Holy Prophet. The command of the Holy Prophet is to fight. And if we fight in these conditions, we're guaranteed victory with Allah. They said, what do you mean we're guaranteed victory with Allah? He says, look, the greatest success in existence is to follow the command of the Holy Prophet and to attain shahada, to bear witness to Allah that we submitted to His command first and to nothing else. Our fighting now is perfect. It's the perfect opportunity to attain success with Allah. Whether we win this battle or we die fulfilling the command of Rasulullah, we're victorious. Zayd turned and he says, I agree with Ja'far. And these two men, in their love of fulfilling the command of Allah, convinced the army that instead of retreating, the correct thing to do is fulfill the command of the Holy Prophet and to stand and fight. And they raised the army, they prepared, and the next day they stood in battle. Zayd bin Harith, being the leader, was the one who held the flag and the banner of Islam. And his second in command was Hazrat Ja'far bin Abi Talib, the third after him. And there was an order of succession that should the flag bearer fall, that who would be the next and the next. And as long as the flag in those days was remaining standing, that the army would continue to fight. As soon as they launched the attack, the overpowering force of the Roman army against these Muslims, Zayd was immediately killed. Hazrat Ja'far at-Tayyar then, Hazrat Ja'far bin Abi Talib, picks up the flag, and he now remains stationed as the commander of the army, leading the army. The Roman legion knew that if we want to drop these soldiers, if we want them to end their fight, we need to kill the commander. So famously, they attacked Hazrat Ja'far, and they cut one of his arms. And Hazrat Ja'far did not let the flag fall. They cut his other arm. He still didn't let the flag fall. Until eventually they had to kill and make Hazrat Ja'far a shaheed before the flag could fall to the third person in him. This bravery and gallantry of Hazrat Ja'far and his bravery in the defense of Islam and his lack of preference to what was his material presence in the love of Allah and the defense of Islam is the reason by which Hazrat Ja'far was rewarded the title of Ja'far at-Tayyar. Ja'far of the two wings who will fly in heaven for the sacrifice he made in the defense of Islam. These soldiers who went through this process of fighting against a force that seemed to be multiple times more powerful than them and overpowering over them. If one looked at it with a material vision, one would say that this is complete foolishness. They've behaved in a fashion that is illogical, nonsensical. But one who has basira, who has enlightenment, doesn't look at things in their material consequences. He looks at things in light of what Allah wants him to do. What is that Allah prefers from him, and he prefers that over anything in the material sense. This attribute is what we want to try and attain and achieve. And look at what Allah gave Hazrat Ja'far. Hazrat Ja'far, for his sacrifice and for his gallantry and for his continuing to fight in these unknown and impossible conditions, is granted the status not only that he is known as Ja'far at-Tayyar, but his lineage is one now that is known by the attributes of their grandfather. When Hazrat Aun and Muhammad enter into the battlefield and they recite their rijj, they recite their poetry of introduction to the battlefield, they announce and they say that our grandfathers from one side are Ali ibn Abi Talib, the lion of Allah, and from the other side are Ja'far, the one who is at-Tayyar and given wings in heaven for his bravery. The sacrifice of Hazrat Ja'far at-Tayyar makes him something that is an example for us today. When we recite Salat Ja'far at-Tayyar, it is that prayer that was granted to Hazrat Ja'far on the day of the conquest of Khaybar. The day of the conquest of Khaybar was the day that Hazrat Ja'far came back from Abyssinia with the Muslims, and he met Rasulullah as Rasulullah came back from Khaybar. Hazrat Ja'far, for his commitment and love to the religion of Islam and to the Holy Prophet, was so beloved to the Holy Prophet that he said on the day of the conquest of Khaybar, Rasulullah himself says, I don't know what is making me happier, the conquest of Khaybar or the returning of Ja'far to me. Hazrat Ja'far is so beloved to Rasulullah because he has developed the understanding of preferring Allah over himself. We saw this same attribute in the companions of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. That the companions of Imam al-Hussain, they describe the army of Umar Sa'ad to have over 18,000 men. Some narrations explain 30,000 men were present on the side of Umar Sa'ad. Abu Abdullah al-Hussain, in the famous narrations, has only 72 companions. What was it that possessed these 72 men to stand against an army of 18,000 without consideration for their own lives or for their own condition that would go forward? This is what we would call enlightenment, knowing what it is that Allah wants from us in creation and preferring that to whatever we can do for ourselves and what we have for ourselves. Look at the example of Burayr ibn Khuzayr. Burayr was one of the teachers of Quran in Kufa. His example on the day of Ashura is that they say that in the morning when all of the soldiers were preparing their armor and getting ready, they said, we saw Burayr laughing on the morning of Ashura. And when he was chastised by one of the companions, they said, oh Burayr, today is a day of masa'ib, it's a day of difficulty. Why are you laughing? Burayr says, I swear if you ask about my character, I'm not one who likes to laugh and joke. I go against the concept of joking and making light of affairs. But I swear to you today, my happiness and excitement is that I am but hours away from the pleasure of Allah. I am just hours away from attaining a great victory with Allah, and I can't accept but to be happy for it. This personality, this is what basira, or to have insight and to have enlightenment about knowing what our priorities in life are, about knowing about what it is that Allah wants from us and preferring what Allah desires from us over what we desire. Now, the example of shahadat in love of Ahlul Bayt is one where we can see these personalities appreciating and knowing what it is that Allah wants from us. And we can see that an army of 18,000 was incapable of understanding what it is that they should prefer in their existence than material wealth. We saw the example of Hur. Hur is showing his enlightenment. Hur, the morning of Ashura, what does he say? When they say, oh Hur, we thought you to be a brave man, but now I see you trembling and I see you nervous and unknown of what you want to do. Hur replied, I'm trying to understand and see, do I prefer this dunya over the akhirah, or do I prefer the akhirah over dunya? That's the discussion of understanding where our preference is. That's the idea of where we prefer. Do we prefer what is with Allah, or do we prefer what's with dunya? And we saw that majority of people can't make this distinction. This is why 18,000 men were on the opposition fighting against Imam al-Hussain, because they didn't have this enlightenment in them. Our goal is, how do we develop this enlightenment? How do we develop this characteristic within us? Inshallah, may Allah hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When our Imam is present, this enlightenment of knowing that preferring what is with the Imam over what is with us and over what is with the dunya is what will motivate us to be with him, is what will motivate us to leave everything behind in the interest of following the command of the Imam. That enlightenment and understanding that the right of the Imam over us is greater than the right over ourselves is one of the important things that will allow us to be able to go after the Imam and forget about our mortgage, forget about our car payments, forget about even taking care of our families and children. Imam Rada explains, he says, for us, do you think that we don't care about your families? Do you think we don't care about your children? Imam Rada explains and he says, O mu'mineen, have certainty that when Al-Qa'im rises, that he will be the first to take care of your families. Don't worry about them. It is our responsibility to take care of them. This is that motivation towards having enlightenment and knowing what is preferred with Allah over preferring our own desires and our own needs and our own material conditions. Now, it happens in our lifetime that many times the choice between dunya and Allah is not the choice between life and death, but it is something that we have to prepare for and something that we have to become in the habit of knowing how to make our choices. Today, to have enlightenment is to prefer Allah's desire over our own desires. That's to look past, for example, our material needs to prefer what Allah wants from us. To be able to sacrifice that, yes, if I give this money, for example, as sadaqah, if I give this money for the majlis of Imam Hussain, I won't be able to buy X necessity that I have. I won't be able to buy this item that I want. I won't be able to upgrade my phone. I won't be able to get a new car. I will have to sacrifice from my material needs for preferring what Allah wants for me over what I want for myself. Today, that aspect of enlightenment is taken in every decision that we make. That what is the reason that I'm making this decision? What is the benefit I'm hoping to attain from this decision? When someone abuses me or speaks negatively to me, my response to him, is it something that I can, if I neglect this, is it only a slight to myself? And can I let this go in the interest of preferring what Allah prefers for me? If, for example, that this comment bothered me and I ignore this comment, is it with the interest that Allah is pleased by my patience? These sacrifices on a day-to-day basis that we make, whether we make it from our personality, whether we make it from our material possessions, whether we make it from our desires that we want in this world, with the preference of preferring Allah over them, this is that aspect of developing enlightenment. Now the question is how do we develop the skill? One of the discussions around this development of enlightenment and the development of the preference of what Allah prefers, or to have basira in the affairs of dunya, is to say that this requires additional work. That this isn't simply something that comes from salat, saum, and Quran. Why? Because in the army of Umar Sa'd were the Huffaz, they were the ones who had memorized Quran. The army of Umar Sa'd was the one who was looking to see, let's finish this battle before the time of Salat al-Asr. Prayer wasn't something that prevented these people from being able to violate the rights of Ahlul Bayt. Prayer is one of the wajibat that brings the fundamental, but there's additional development that we need to make within ourselves. There's additional work that we have to do if we want to attain a level of enlightenment. And this is what Allah is explaining in the Quran. When we take a look, for example, in Surah An-Nisa, verse number 103, Allah says, فَإِذَا قَضَيْتُمُ الصَّلَاةُ فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقَعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِكُمْ فَإِذَا أَطْمَأْنَنْتُمْ فَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا. In this verse, Allah is talking about that after you have completed your prayers, فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ, remember Allah, قِيَامًا وَقَعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِكُمْ. That the remembrance of Allah, dhikrullah, is something that is mandatory or that should be done after you've performed your salah. This dhikr and remembrance of Allah is where we develop enlightenment. When we take a look at the ahkam and the mustahabbat, we take a look and we see that our Holy Prophet has given us the importance for tafakkuh and thoughtfulness in religion. That 1 hour of thinking and thoughtfulness is better than 70 years of worship. This thoughtfulness is where enlightenment comes into our lifestyle. This thoughtfulness and the remembrance of Allah and the seeing and thinking about Allah is where we find that we can attain enlightenment. Why? Because this thinking about Allah, this thinking and remembering Allah is where we learn that in every decision-making process that we have in our lives, we have to consider, what does Allah want from me? What would Allah like to see from me? This thoughtfulness about Allah, this thinking about Allah, is where we develop this process of consideration and thinking. How do I make decisions in life? Do I simply get motivated by the next material desire in front of me? Have I set my ship directly based upon material needs or based upon what Allah wants from me? This thoughtfulness and pondering over Allah is one of those attributes that helps us ensure that we follow the path of Allah and that we have true insight and depth and perception to what is the reality with Allah and not the reality with the world. Look at how Allah describes it as well too, that how you can come to this basira when we look at Surah Al Imran. Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ardi wa ikhtilafil layli wan nahari la ayatin li ulil albab. That certainly in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the night and the day are signs for those who are thoughtful, who ponder. Alladina. Now Allah is describing who are those that ponder. What are they thinking about? What are they looking at when they look at the signs of Allah? الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقَعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ. They are those, ulul albab, are those who think about Allah when they are standing, when they are sitting, when they are laying on their sides. وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And they are thoughtful over the creation of the heavens and the earth. And they say, رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. Oh my Lord, you have created nothing in this that is wasteful or useless. Subhanaka faqina adhab an-nar. Glory be to you, O Allah, and protect us from the fire of hell. This thought process, look at the conclusion of what it's coming to. By thinking about and seeing the signs in the presence of a creator in this world, and seeing the signs of Allah all around us, we come to the conclusion of how thoughtful Allah has been in His creation and that nothing is wasteful, nothing is useless. The conclusion of that is where we see enlightenment. That this person now, when he makes dua to Allah, when he prays to Allah, he asks Allah, look at the dua that the person is making. رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا سُبْحَانَكَ فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Separate me, keep me away from the fire of hell. This is the sign of enlightenment. That upon acknowledging and seeing the signs of Allah in all of creation, seeing the signs in the heavens and the earth, acknowledging the presence of Allah has brought me that now when I ask Allah, the most important thing that I need to get from Allah is the separation from the fire of hell. That separation from the fire of hell is what my goal is. My goal is not asking Allah for a Tesla, for a Maserati. My goal is not asking Allah for a mansion. My goal is not asking Allah for $1 million. No, $1 million is nothing anymore. $1 billion. My goal is that my akhirah is preserved. That which is with Allah is preserved and protected. That is where I attain success and value. That's what our goal is, that right now, for us to develop this basira, to develop this enlightenment, that tomorrow when Allah hastens the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman, when He makes my Imam present in front of me, that my thought process when thinking, do I answer the call of the Imam, is not to think, who will pay my mortgage? Who's going to take care of my children? Is not, what am I going to do about my worldly affairs and worldly matters? It's to think and to acknowledge that dunya is something fani and finite and limited, and what is with Allah is what remains. And that what I want to do is give everything that Allah created me for, that Allah created me, and spend it in the way of Allah. And that if my Imam has called to me, that I answer his call. The way the companions of Imam al-Hussain answered his call. The danger is that dunya becomes so important to us. And if we're not thinking about Allah, we'll wind up in this position that we fast and we pray, but my thoughts are always with my money, my wealth, and my position. Look at the example that after the shahadat of Imam al-Hussain, when the tents were being looted, there's the statement that someone came and was robbing the gold chain from Sayyidah Fatima al-Sughra, the daughter of Imam al-Hussain, and as he robs her, he keeps crying as he's robbing her. Sayyidah Fatima says to him, "Why are you crying, O man, as you do this action?" He says, "I am crying because of your condition and your noble characteristics and how bad it is what's happening to you. How bad it is that you are being treated this way and that you're being looted and robbed in this condition." So Sayyidah Fatima says, "Then why don't you stop?" He says, "Because if I don't do this action, then someone else will. Why should I face a loss and face my own loss and let somebody else benefit from this action?" That is the dangerous thought process. That is the frightening thought process, to know that something is wrong and bad, but the fear of losing out on a material gain, the fear of losing out on the material benefit is driving my actions so much that even though I know it's bad and it's bad for my akhir and what I'm doing is evil, I don't want to lose out on the material benefit, so I continue to perform this action. That's that frightening characteristic of being lost in this world. And that's why we want to attain this enlightenment, that our thought process is, what does Allah want from me, and preferring what Allah wants from me over what my dunya and my nafs wants from me. A classic example of this is Habib ibn Madahir. Habib was that beloved companion of Imam al-Hussain. When Imam al-Hussain, in front of an army of thousands, he calls to Habib and he sends a messenger to Habib. Look at how Habib tests his family. When Habib ibn Madahir famously receives the letter of Imam al-Hussain, he reads this letter and he returns to his house. And his wife asks him, "Oh Habib, what happened? Why was there a messenger at the door?" Habib said, "My master Imam al-Hussain has sent me a letter." Qasim asks, "Oh Habib, what did your master ask of you?" Habib replies, he says, "Imam al-Hussain is in difficulty. He has called to me to come and be his assistant." Qasim says, "Oh Habib, what are you thinking then?" Habib now tests his wife. Famously he says, "Oh Qasim, if I go to Aba Abdullah, who will take care of you and my young child Qasim?" Habib ibn Madahir at this time had a son who was not baligh. They say that he was under the age of 10 at this point in time. Habib is showing, he's demonstrating. He says, one who is lost in dunya, his concern is, what will happen to my wife and children? I go away to Imam al-Hussain, my life will be in danger. I sacrifice my life for Imam Hussain. What will happen to my lineage after me? Habib understands what his obligation is and what he should do, but he wants to see the condition of Qasim. He wants to see, what will he leave behind? Will his wife and his child understand to prioritize Allah, or will they be people who will be then upset that, oh, how unfortunate are we that we lost our breadwinner, the Imam took away from us the one who took care of us, our guarantor. Look at the beautiful reply of Qasim. She says, "Oh Habib," famously these lines are narrated. Oh Habib, if you are worried about dunya, you stay here with the children. I myself will go to the help of Imam al-Hussain. How could you worry about the dunya and worry about your children when the Imam has called to you? Oh Habib, you raised your household in a way that they understood and appreciated what was with Allah before they appreciated what their own world was. Look, even the slaves and the servants of the house of Habib. Famously, Habib ibn Madahir says to his slave, "Servant, take my horse and go outside of the city of Kufa. I want to go to the help of Hussein ibn Ali, but if I leave the city with the horse, they will think and they will stop me from going. So you go take the horse outside and take him outside of Kufa and take him grazing. I will come to you in the middle of the night, and then from there I will take the horse and I will leave." Habib, the narrations famously that say that when Habib became a little bit late at night reaching to his horse, he heard his slave talking to the horse. The slave said to the horse, "Oh horse, it may be that our master has been stopped from coming to us. It may be that our master was stopped by the police in the city that he could not leave Kufa. But don't worry.
Even if our master Habib does not come, O horse, I will take you myself to go and to serve our master Imam al-Hussein. Don't worry, horse, we will make and present a sacrifice from our master Habib and ourselves that we will serve in under Aba Abdullah Imam al-Hussein. Habib says, when I reached this person, when I reached the slave, I took my horse and I said to him, you are free. You may go now. The servant turns and he says very famously, he says, oh Habib, now that you go to our master to serve and present the sacrifice, you won't take me with you. You won't take me along to go to my master. You want to leave me here. Look at how the slave prefers Imam al-Hussein and to be with Imam al-Hussein over his own freedom. The sacrifice of Habib was such that he was the leader of all of the companions of Imam al-Hussein. He was the one who was the commander of all of the ashab and the leader of one of the wings and the flanks of the army of Abu Abdullah. As such, when Habib becomes shaheed in the field of Karbala, they wanted to disgrace Habib. When all of the heads of the shuhada were mounted on spears, that one of the heads that was hung from the neck of a horse was the head of Habib ibn Madahir, that they wanted to show that this Habib is disgraced. They describe that as they entered into the city of Kufa, all of the heads on spears but the head of Habib was hung by the neck of a horse. It said that as they paraded through the city of Kufa, that the man whose horse had the head of Habib hung from it noticed that a young boy kept following him. And this young boy kept looking at the head that was hanging from this horse's neck. Whenever the soldier would turn to him and say, "Oh boy, what is it that you want? Why are you looking at this head?" the boy would run away. Twice this happened. 3 times this happened. Eventually the horseman grabbed the child and he says, "Oh boy, you keep coming looking at the head that hangs from my horse. Why don't you tell me what you want? What is your problem?" This young boy says, "My name is Qasim ibn Habib and you are carrying the head of my father. Why won't you return the head of my father to me so that I may bury him and I may bury my father for his sacrifice?" The man replies, he says, "Oh child, look at how cold his heart has become. Oh child, I will not return this head for you to you, because it is by this head that the Khalifa and Ubaidullah will reward me with wealth, and that wealth is more important to me than the dignity of your father." ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Let's raise our hands in dua. ندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم Ya Allah, 10 times in your loudest of voices. This is Thursday night. This is the night of the answering of du'as, and we have many du'as that need to be answered. 10 times call out, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, بحق حسين وجده وأبي وأمه وأخي وتسعة المعصومين من ذريته. O Allah, forgive our sins and cover our flaws. O Allah, accept this small ibadat from us. Ya Allah, the mu'mineen who are suffering through difficulties, whether they be the difficulties of this fire, they be the difficulties of COVID. Ya Allah, remove the difficulties from the mu'mineen, the muslimeen, and all of the people of this earth. O Allah, hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman. Make us from the upright supporters of Sahib al-Zaman. Keep our children on the upright path and the followers of Imam al-Zaman. Ya Allah, we ask you by the right of this night, fulfill the hajat of the mu'mineen wherever they are. Ya Allah, remove sickness and disease from the mu'mineen wherever they are. Ya Allah, give aman to the mu'mineen wherever they are. O Allah, most importantly, entitle us to the shafa'ah of Abu Abdullah in dunya and in akhirah. Rahimallah man yakra'a surat al-Fatiha ma'al ikhlasi was salawat. Allahumma salli ala.
يا مولا يا مولا يا مولا حسين 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 يا مولا يا مولا يا مولا Hussain ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. Hussain ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. Thirsty Ruqayya, thirsty Abdullah. We just need water. Father, some water. Where's your flag bearer? Where's your flag bearer? Son of Fatima, son of Fatima. Hussain ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. 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 Hussein's all alone. Shah Qasim has gone. Ali Akbar's gone. Abu Fadil's gone. Even Abdullah. Even Abdullah. Hussain wa wayla. Hussain wa wayla. Hussain ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. 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 Zainab cries Allah. Where's Saba Abdullah? Where's Ali Akbar? Where is Abdullah? Where's my Alam Dar? Where's my Alam Dar? Where's my flag bearer? Where's my protector? Where is my Abbas? Where is my Abbas? Hussain ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. 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 Now the tent's on fire, shackled Ruqayya. Zainab you have seen, Zainul Abidin, ill and locked in chains, ill and locked in chains. Zahra cries in pain, my Hussain is slain. Where is my Hussain? Where is my Hussain? Hussain ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. 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 Your head on a spear, my eyes filled with tears. Your body trampled, why were they so cruel? And it still hurts me, and it still hurts me that you die thirsty, that you die thirsty. Hussain ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. 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 Zahra cries Hussain, Zainab cries Hussain. My tears cry Hussain, my heart cries Hussain. Hussain cries out last, Hussain cries out last. Where is my Abbas? Where is my Abbas? Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer. 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 Children cry in thirst. Where is my Abbas? Abbas cries in pain. Children, I've been slain. I can't bring water. I can't bring water. For you Ruqayya, for you Ruqayya. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer. 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 Cries of Al-Atash, but I am Abbas. I will bring water for Hussein's daughter, but they've ambushed me, but they've ambushed me. Master, forgive me, Master, forgive me. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer. 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 He won't quench his thirst. Hussain comes first with his arms cut off. Still won't taste a drop. Blinded by arrow, blinded by arrow. I cry in sorrow, I cry in sorrow. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer. 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 Women and children were slapped and beaten. Children cry in fear. Zainab full of tears. Oh my brother dear, oh my brother dear. I wish you were here, I wish you were here. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer. 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 Saviors of Islam, I send my salam upon you, Master. When I drink water, all my love for you and my life for you. I will beat my chest, I will never rest. I will give my life, I will sacrifice in my life always, in my life always. Your flag is raised high, your flag is raised high. Hussain, Ya Mawla, Ya Mawla, Ya Mawla. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer. Hussain, Ya Mawla, Ya Mawla, Ya Mawla. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer. Ya Mawla, Ya Mawla, Ya Mawla. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer. Hussain, Ya Mawla, Ya Mawla, Ya Mawla. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer.
عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات.